Wonderful.
So we're going to welcome to our 10th session of FIST. FIST stands for Flow in Sports, and the T was Tuesdays and Thursdays. And the beauty about this, and it's really grown, is that the sports psychology ended up being on other days. So then we just basically added and other days as well. So that was kind of interesting. It's a conversation with elite athletes, and we certainly have an elite athlete today on our program. We're going to welcome a legend, if I may say, ice hockey referee Kerry Fraser. Kerry, as you know, do a little bit of research on him, has refereed 1,904 regular season games spanning 30 years. He has participated in 12 Stanley Cup Finals, the 1998 Olympics, the 2010 Winter Classic, to name a few. He is the author of The Final Call, one of my favorite books as well. Certainly enjoy reading it, and leading up to this interview, I couldn't help but reread many of those stories. He's a wonderful storyteller. And so now he is a hockey analyst and a broadcaster. Welcome, Kerry.
Dorian, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you, my friend, and with all of your aspiring athletes and psychologists, I'm sure.
So just to let you know, on call, what we have is grade 6s, so that's 12 years old. Then we have grade 7s and 8s, so 13, 14 years old, from the Montreal area. And this leads us up to a perfect next slide, which is basically our agenda. Okay, and what we have as our agenda is a welcome, as we did here, our rapid fire section. And I'm going to just remind you, Kerry, rapid fire is going to be rapid fire. He's a great storyteller, but we're going to put a little bit of pressure on him to answer within a few seconds. And we have a special announcement by our principal, Mr. Ruji, and that will be done at the end. So, Kerry, let me just begin by just asking you how you got started in refereeing hockey.
Well, like all Canadian youth, I aspired to be an NHL player. My father was a minor professional player when I was born. I learned to skate when I was 15 months old. Dad would take me to practice. I'm talking 15 months, gang, not 15 years. And I would go to practice with my father, or they'd put on my little skates, the trainer, and put me out onto the ice, pushing a chair around to start until I used my hockey stick to prop me up. And I became a good little hockey player. I had lots of opportunity to play with great players and made it to the junior A level. I was in Ontario. I was the captain of that team in my final season. I was undrafted, and we always have to have different avenues. We have to be prepared that the road turns a certain way, or it can be blocked for us. We can't put all our eggs in one basket. I had US scholarship offers, a lot of them, to Division I schools. I also could have played in the minor professional leagues. I decided to go to a referee school that summer after my final season of junior. I was 19 years old. It was 1972. I inserted myself and really wanted to learn the trade at this 5-day referee school. I was scouted by the NHL at that camp, and 2 days later, I was invited to the NHL training camp for officials. I was there with all the regular guys, and 10-day camp. They sent me out for preseason games, exhibition games. I was working NHL games as a linesman, and then they signed me to a contract, and I was off and running in a career that I had no idea that I would ever be interested in, but I obviously stayed the course. I had to learn on the job. I had some great coaching, and fortunately, I had an amazing career with some of the greatest legendary players that the game has ever known.
Great. A lot of good stuff here. I always enjoy talking to you and having these interviews. It's our second, worth noting. And I did meet with you a couple other times when I was doing my master's thesis, and we had to pick your brain on the psychological characteristics of peak performance. And we looked at 10 mental skills. And just to let you know, what I ended up doing from there is what I created 12 modules. I figured that every month the brain is still in function. And so when we train our athletes every month, they work on a different module: motivation, routine, goal setting, self-talk, attitude, mental toughness, flow, mental imagery, things like that. So I'll just take where we are here in terms of the pandemic. How do you think the pandemic has affected athletes?
Well, it's impacted everyone, certainly athletes, in their ability to participate at the sport that they love, whether it's at every level, whether it was at grade school, high school, college, the National Hockey League, Major League Baseball, the NFL. Everything was shut down. So during that pandemic, and it created in all of us, no matter what we did and what we like to do, we had to adjust. Rather than sit in a cave and wall up, I found that for me, the best thing to do was to try and sustain some sort of normalcy and do the things that I love to do. From a player's perspective, they could get out and skate, although rinks might be closed to them. You're always going to find a way, though, Dorian and Lior, I'm sorry. And so for me, rather than, and we were in South New Jersey here. We're like 90 miles from the very epicenter in New York City of this pandemic. I wasn't going to be shut in. I protected myself. I did all the things that were recommended: wash hands, wear a mask, those sorts of things around people. Don't touch your face. But I got on a bicycle every day that it wasn't snowing or raining in South New Jersey near Philadelphia. And I rode my road bike 15 to 25 miles every day. It built up my immune system. It gave me a feeling of well-being. It gave me also a feeling that I was doing something good for my body and my mind. And while I was riding the bike, interestingly, I would I would do some positive self-talk, but I would also do a lot of praying. And I would pray for people that were sick. It wasn't just turn the pedal in a mindless kind of thing. I used it for an opportunity to do something that I feel positive about and also good about. The NHL got underway under the bubble. They did a great job putting the game back. And the beauty of that is, even though they weren't allowing fans in the building, they were providing entertainment for the people that were shut in homes to get back to something that they enjoyed as well, the game on television.
So, you're talking a lot about this, how the life has changed during the pandemic. But, if you look at the timeline of let's say, hockey referees, the pressure that they felt, now I find that everybody is getting that pressure. So as elite athletes, we had that edge. Can you just describe what pressure is for you and how to deal with pressure?
I embrace it. When I was put into a big game, when there was something, even be reassigned for a game where on back-to-back games, maybe something happened in the first game, a brawl, I would get a call and be reassigned. I was one of their top people, and they trusted me, and I would go into that game knowing it was a potential powder keg, but it made me energized. I embraced not pressure, but the energy of that situation. I took it as a positive, not a negative. I didn't go in with fear. I went in knowing that I can make a positive difference. I am going to do everything possible in the preparation, my mental preparation, my physical preparation, bring my emotional level, not over the top, worrying about it the day of the game. I'm going to bring it all to the right peak where I control it and not where my emotion controls me and my energy. When I drop that puck, I want to be in the perfect scenario in my mind and in my body. And then whatever happens, happens. It's up to the players when I drop that puck. Hopefully they'll turn it back to me, give it back to me when they're done. But when I have to lay the hammer down, when I have to raise my arm and call a penalty, I was fully prepared to do so.
Great stuff. Any time when you put your hand up, you're making a call, and you're like, oh boy, what do I do now? I don't think I should have made that call.
Absolutely. You know, we're all human, right? We all make mistakes. The most successful people in any industry, school, anywhere, students, the ones that minimize their mistakes are the ones that get the higher grades, the higher marks. They excel in what it is they do and put their mind to do. So there were times, certainly, when I put my arm up and I went, oh my God, I think that's a stinker of a penalty. And I've had players come to me at that time and they would complain about it. And they'd say, that was a lousy call. Now, here's a lesson. What do I say at that point? Does human nature dictate that I always have to be right because I've got those armbands on that sweater over my shoulder for my 1500th game? Or do I admit in honesty, and that's what I did. I said, you know what? I think you're right, player. I think I missed it. I think I overreacted. And the automatic reaction from a player when a referee says that is, you owe us one. You've got to make it right. You've got to pay us back. My response immediately would be, two wrongs don't make a right. Two wrongs don't make a right. So please do your best to kill that thing and get me out of this. There were times I'd be on the goal line after calling a penalty that I knew wasn't a great one, and I'd be praying, please, Lord, don't let them score. And sure enough, that was usually the time I was humbled and the puck went in the net. It's a defining moment in anyone's character and their courage that when you're tasked with making a decision and you have to do your very best to make the right one, but when you don't do so, when you're wrong, when you fail, you have to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and stay the course. You can't let it stay in your mind. For example, if I was listening to the crowd and the crowd was chanting, as they often did, Fraser sucks, 20,000 people, you know, you can hear it and the noise is loud, whether it's in the Montreal Forum or the Centre Bell, and they are screaming at referee Fraser. If I hold that sound in this real estate in between my ears, then the most expensive real estate ever, then I'm going to miss what's going on elsewhere. I let it pass through. I don't hold on to either a missed call. I don't dwell on it. I don't keep thinking about it, because I know that if I do, I'm not focused in the moment, and the game is played and the game is refereed in the moment, not in the past and not in the future.
Well, I get my students often to say, when I say right here, they all scream right now. So that's definitely great advice. I certainly like the real estate analogy. I'm also a hockey referee myself, and so I was just wondering about coining the phrase home base, half piston, full piston. What are, you know, what is, where does that come from? And are you the one that coined that?
I designed the officiating philosophy in 1983 that was adopted, and I taught at a referee school in Western Canada, and the referee in chief of Canadian Amateur Hockey was there, along with the Western Province directors of officiating in those provinces, and it made sense. I was a little guy. I couldn't see over or around the NHL players. I'm 5'7.5". There's no way that I could make a decision if I stood in one spot and just waited for players to move out of my vision. I had to create a sight line that was the best sight line where I could see a play. To do so, I watched somebody that I admire greatly. This guy right over here, Wayne Gretzky. He had such vision of the ice. And I'm a very cerebral kind of individual. I'm a thinker. I try and figure things out. And I was watching a film clip of Wayne Gretzky skating towards a defenseman. It was just the defenseman in front of his blue line and Gretz with the puck looking straight ahead. Nobody else in camera frame. And Wayne, just before the blue line, threw a behind the back pass, no look, never looked, just behind his back. And the puck went sideways. And then Yuri Curry, his right winger, skated full speed into the camera frame. The puck was tape to tape. It was a tape to tape pass. And Yuri never slowed down. Gretz never looked. And I had to figure out, how did he know that that player was going to be in that exact space in that moment of time? And I came up with a philosophy. I'm a sailor, and I would dead reckon. There's something called dead reckoning for navigation when you don't have GPS. And it's based on speed, time, and distance. The boat or the skater is moving in a certain direction with certain speed, and he will be intersected at a certain point at a certain time. And Wayne had little flash pictures that he would take of all the players on the ice. I figured that out. I knew there had to be some philosophy that he implemented to make sure that he knew where these guys all are on the ice. And it wasn't just looking at the puck. He knew 3-4 chess moves down the board where players were going to be and where the puck was going to be. So I implemented that for officiating for myself so that I could see the play in advance based on the way the players were leaning, the way they were moving. If a guy had the puck and he was carrying the puck and there was no possible foul potential, no opponent around him for at least 3-4 clicks on the camera frame, why would I look at him? I want to reset the table, reset the picture so that I know that this guy's there and he's close to an opponent and he might get hooked or held. And there's another guy in the middle. And so now 3 clicks down the frame, oh, that guy's close to him. He might check him, he might foul him, and then I'd pick that one up again. But my eyes were constantly moving. My mind was always thinking about where the players are now, and based on their speed, their direction, and the way they're leaning even, when they're going to shoot the puck, if they pressured down on their stick, I knew that a pass would be going, but I also knew in advance of that pass where all of the outlets were for that player to pass the puck. And I could chase it. I could chase the play.
Yeah. So it sounds like you've created something that will help you for 99% of the time. And I guess the other 1%, you'd be standing behind the mesh.
Well, never behind the net unless I had to go to the net with and that's where I see today's officials getting themselves in trouble. They go to places, and my philosophy was, I want to be where the players aren't. I know where the puck is going, and where the puck goes, players are going to attack that puck. So I don't want to be standing there when they attack the puck. I want to retreat from the puck in advance of the players getting there. What you're seeing now, and mark my words, if you watch the games tonight, you're going to see referees standing in highly occupied areas of the ice that players want to battle for the puck. You're going to see them below the goal line, halfway between the net and the sideboards. Worst place you can be. They get caught up in the play. You've got to move through that location very quickly if you have to change from one side to the other behind the net. Never stand there. Same thing, guys behind the net. Pucks coming from the blue line on shots, and I see them bailing and ducking, fear of their life. Why would you stand there? You're not going to, one, injury potential. Number two, you're going to duck and hide, and you're not going to see what's happening with the players.
Our next module that we're working on with our students is what's called mental toughness. And I remember when I interviewed you, and you're talking about your mental toughness, getting hit with a Paul Coffey slap shot, not wanting to take off the boot. Perhaps retell that story and what mental toughness is for you.
Well, I'm really an old school guy. And my father, one of the things that we acquire students over time is in our environment with our family, the way we're raised by our parents, the way we interact in the schoolyard with our teammates, schoolmates, or when we play physical sports, how we deal with adversity and also injuries, bumps, bruises, that sort of thing. I've seen some players that lay down easy. I was never a guy to lay down. So what Lior is talking about is in a game in 1982 in Northlands Coliseum in Edmonton, Paul Coffey, great player, Hall of Fame guy, intercepted the puck that was coming out of the zone. And as I was approaching it, Coffey got the puck and he just pounded it back into the zone as I'm moving towards him. I couldn't go one way or the other. It hit my ankle, my right ankle. The puck went out of the rink, but it knocked the end off my fibula. It broke my ankle. I knew it was broken. I could feel, but there was only one referee on the ice at the time and two linesmen. My job, I felt personally responsible. I wasn't going to leave the game. I wasn't going to leave my two colleagues, and I was there to do a job. I finished the game on the broken ankle, and this broke 5 minutes into the game. But in between periods, I would lay on my back with my skate up. I never loosened the skate off because otherwise the foot would have blown up like a balloon. And that's exactly what happened. As the game ended, I got into the dressing room. I took my skate off, and my foot looked like somebody had taken an air compressor and went poof. And my foot, I had no toes. It was just one big foot. I missed 7 weeks after that. They had to wait for a week to cast me before the swelling would go down. It was so swollen from doing a whole game on it. I also had a fractured cheekbone. The game was in Atlanta. Stéphane Facette was playing for the Los Angeles Kings, I believe. And there was a cross point shot, slap shot, and Stéphane just deflected it. And it took off the blade of his goal stick. And I just tried to miss it. And it caught me in the eye, just below the eye, broke my cheekbone. And I put my hand up and my fingers went right into the bone.
You weren't wearing your visor?
I wasn't wearing a helmet. So it was the end of the period. There was like 10 seconds left. I knocked on the Zamboni door. They opened the door. I walked off, held my face. And so I got into an argument. They x-rayed me at the infirmary, the medical room at the rink. And the doctor said, well, you're done for the night. You've got a non-displaced fracture of your cheekbone. Now, this is the end of the first period. I got 2 more to work. I said, you said non-displaced, right? He said, yeah, that's correct. I said, well, that means it's not going anywhere, right? He said, no, it's not going anywhere. I said, well, then I'm going back out there to finish the game. And we got into a dispute about it. And he said, you're nuts. And I said, probably. I said, if I was a player that had to play, what would you do? He said, well, we'd make sure you had a visor on. I said, then get me a helmet, because I don't wear one, and put a visor on it, and I'll go back out there. So I finished the game we were in the 2-referee system, and my eye was closed by the end of the 3rd period. So I made sure that I stayed to the boards.
Definitely sounds a lot like mental toughness displayed. But more importantly, you hear the companies out there having mission statements, values, philosophy. Sounds like you're just swimming in this every time you wake up in the morning. Your philosophy, your vision, your mission statement, your values. What drives you every day like that?
Well, I'm a perfectionist. Again, it's acquired. I had a father that, as I mentioned, was a very aggressive player. The word back then would be goon. He was a goon. He was a fighter. He was also a boxer. He was very harsh in the household. He was very demanding. I played 3 years of AAA midget for him. He actually taught me how to box, to fight in our kitchen when I was like 12 years old. And so when I played for him with our great midget team, we won all Ontario championships. We had 5 guys off our team go on to play in the NHL. One of them won 4 Stanley Cups with the New York Islanders, Wayne Merrick. He was my teammate, line mate. And they were all big guys. But whenever, and I'm not a proponent of fighting now that we know what happens with concussions and things. But I was that aggressive little guy that didn't like bullies. I was the guy that my dad would tap on the shoulder if he would have to go after somebody. He'd say, okay, go teach that guy a lesson. And I did what I was told to do. So that prepared me, I guess, to some degree, to a large degree, as a referee in the National Hockey League. Because number one, it takes courage. It was a very intimidating time in the game when I broke into the NHL and professional hockey. There were bench clearing brawls. There was all kinds of fighting that went on. There was stick work. And the Philadelphia Flyers and the Boston Bruins were very intimidating teams. The Broad Street Bullies are what the Philadelphia Flyers were called. And they literally would try and intimidate everybody, players, referees. I had the courage to stand my ground. I recognized some deficiencies that I had, which is really important. We all work on our strengths. We all know our strengths. From a hockey playing perspective, if a guy's a fast skater or a good stick handler, or we always turn one way, we step on the ice and we go right, so it's easy to cross over that way, but we don't go cross over the other way so easily because we never do it, and guys don't practice it. So for me, I had a very defining moment in my career with Wayne Gretzky, the great Wayne Gretzky. And it was in my very first game I had with him, and it was in Edmonton in the Northlands Coliseum. And Wayne started from the very first shift after I dropped the puck. He got touched and he jumped in the air, took a dive, and he looked sideways to see if my arm was going to go up before he even hit the ice. Now, we didn't have a diving penalty back then, but my internal engine was such that type A personality, little man syndrome, chip on the shoulder. I was not going to be intimidated as the Northlands crowd started to boo me because I didn't call a penalty when Wayne Gretzky hit the ice. And the more he dove, the more stubborn I got. And at the end of that game, I finally gave a penalty, but it was to Wayne Gretzky. He was so frustrated with me. And I replay every game that I ever did afterwards back in my hotel room. I would think of things that I should have or could have done better. Even if the game went well, there's always something that I thought I could have done better. And in this particular game, it hit me like a hockey stick between the eyes. I compromised my own integrity. I compromised the rules that I'm supposed to enforce. I compromised my employer, the respect that I should have had for them, and the game that I love. So I was drawn into an emotional battle as a result of my own personality flaws, not character, but personality flaws that I had acquired over time, growing to that point in my life. And I recognized that I had to control those impulses, those automatic reflexes when it's in your face kind of aggression that was coming my way. I had to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. So what did I do? The very next time I had a game with Wayne Gretzky, I apologized to him. I went up to him and I said, listen, Wayne, I got to apologize for that first time we met. I said I was really wrong. I took it personally, and I'm going to be better for it. But please do me a favor. If you're fouled, fine, you're going to get the call, but please don't dive on me. I take that as a personal assault. And we developed an amazing relationship. And, from that, I recognized also that relationships are the most important thing in any business. So I worked hard at not trying to please players, but being able to communicate with them in such a way that when they're upset and angry, I tried to bring the temperature down. I tried to do the right thing. I tried to create win-win situations instead of me having to win all the time.
Great stuff. Great stuff. You're talking about bullies. Now the acronym we're using now is a lot is WITS. WITS. Walk away. I, ignore. T, talk it out, and S, seek help. Before we go into the rapid fire, I'm going to get the students if they can just check their chat, and we'll do some administrative items very quickly. We're going to get them to sign in. Okay. Perhaps you can just let the audience know what you're doing now, how they can follow you, any other plugs that you would like, you're free to go.
Well, I'm really trying to help people wherever I can. I think that that's what we're called to do. And I'd like to share at some point, if we have a couple of minutes, that story with Theo Fleury and Tyson Nash, because it epitomizes our human weakness, but also our human strength, where we have the opportunity to do something that's good and right and take a bad situation and make it better. And oftentimes we don't recognize that. So I'll touch on that later, but right now I'm invested in the golf business. I love the game. We have a private golf organization that I am the member of director relations and memberships for. It's by invitation only. Members have to belong to a private country club, and we have them all over North America. We have them in Mexico at Diamante, which are world-class golf courses. We have a member at Royal Melbourne, which is rated number 3, I believe, in the world. We have members at England, Ireland, and Scotland. So I played golf today before I jumped on with you with one of our members in New Jersey, and I love the game. I love to walk. It's great for the mind. It's great for the body, and it's great to interact with people now again after the COVID lockdown. It's like we have a breath of fresh air again. And I know in Canada you guys are suffering. I feel so badly for you. We have members up there. I talked to 2 of them in the last 2 days, and it's been tough. But you have to. This is where the mind exercise is really important for you, because you can't get down, you can't get depressed. If you feel it coming, if that monster starts to come close in on you, get outside, safe, put a mask on if that's what they ask you to do, and make sure that you do something physical in the open air, something that you enjoy.
Perhaps I could put a little bit of pressure on you to dig up that story, because I'm afraid we're going to run out of time after.
Okay.
You want to share the story with Theron Fleury? I know.
I'd be honored to. I'd be honored to. Students, I got to tell you, on the ice in a very aggressive game, there are times when player and referee confrontation takes on a whole different meaning. And there was a player by the name of Theron Fleury who played for the Calgary Flames and a couple of other teams. But he was a little guy like me. He had a history of some things that occurred that we didn't know about that caused him to be very, very angry young man. He had social problems, issues with certain things that are awful and bad, and we all needed to stay away from. In a particular game, and he didn't like authority. And I was the guy that he disliked the most, maybe because we were the same size. I was the authoritative figure. We just didn't get along. And at a playoff game in Chicago, when he was playing for the Calgary Flames, he went absolutely ballistic. And he wrote in his book, Playing with Fire, exactly what he said to me. And I can't repeat the vulgar language, but it is awful, awful stuff. I'll paraphrase it if I can. He said, "I'm going to blank kill you. I don't care who you blank think you are. Let's meet outside in the parking lot, you blank asshole." Fraser immediately gave me a 10-minute misconduct, throwing me out of the game. It was too much. I took my helmet off and threw it at him. Now, I remember my emotion of that moment. When he threw that helmet at me after challenging me to a fight, my right leg started to twitch because the helmet was sitting at my foot, my skate. I wanted to kick it back in his face, but I had learned control. I had learned to be able to control my emotions. When they started to rise, my body was like a thermometer. And when that started to come up and up, got to my throat, the next step is it was coming out, and I would take a breath. I would relax my shoulders, because that's where we carry our tension. Where we're going to fight, we tense up like this. I had to let go of it, and I just threw him out of the game. Now, fast forward 4 years later, in 2000, the year 2000, just before Christmas, December 19th, Theron Fleury had signed a 1-year free agent contract for $8 million with the New York Rangers. But he didn't start the season that year because of his drug-related issues. And the league put him into the substance abuse program. His first game back at Madison Square Garden, I was the referee, and the St. Louis Blues were playing. And there was a second-year pro with the Blues by the name of Tyson Nash. Tyson he wore a loose helmet. He had long hair. He used to flip his head back and fake that like he was getting a penalty, an infraction was committed on him. He'd draw penalties. And at the end of that first period, Theo Fleury, there was a scrum in the corner. It broke up. Theo and I were the last two players on the ice standing at the red line, center red line at Madison Square Garden in New York. And he had tears in his eyes. And he said to me, Kerry, I'm trying to clean my life up, honest. Don't let him talk to me like that. I said, who and what? And he told me that it was Tyson Nash had said something about his drug issues. Now, I had a personal choice, right? What would you do? Think about what you would do right now. This is that same little guy that said all those nasty things in that one game in 96, but many more times prior to that, and challenged me to a fight and took his helmet off and threw it at me. What would you do in that moment when he gave you the statement that he made? Well, what I did is I saw a wounded human being in front of me. I wanted to take his pain away. My wife and I have 7 children. I felt like it was one of my kids there. I wanted to make it better for him. So I immediately said, Theo, if I can get Tyson Nash back here in this very spot at the start of the next period, and if he gives you a sincere apology, will you accept it like a man? He said, yeah, I will. I said, now, promise me if I get him here, you won't break your stick over his head. He said, I promise. So I went right into the visiting coach's room, and Joel Quenneville, who's now coaching the Florida Panthers in the playoffs, was the coach of the Blues. I told Joel what his player Tyson Nash had said to Theo. Joel is a class act. He rolled his eyes. He said, Kerry, do you want me to tell Tyson to take his gear off? He thought I was going to throw him out of the game. I said, what do you think about an apology? I said, it sure might help Theo, and it might not even be bad for your guy. He said, great idea. And he ran into his players' dressing room. Well, I'm standing with Theo Fleury at the start of that period at the red line, and out came the St. Louis Blues. And Tyson Nash looked like he wanted to do a skate by. I flagged him over, and his lip was twitching. He was affected by this. And I said, do you have something to say to this man? Tyson said, he looked Theo right in the eyes. He said, Theo, I'm so sorry. I sincerely apologize. He said, I went way below the line, and I wish you all the best in everything that you have ahead of you. And he tapped him on the shin pad. Boy, I was pretty impressed. I said, Theo, are you good with that? He said, yeah, I'm good with that. I said, boys, shake hands and let's play. Well, the game ended. Tyson Nash did his thing. He drew a guy into a fight from the Rangers, and he got the Ranger player got extra penalty minutes, and the Blues won the game. 10 years later, another forward 10 years, and I finished my career, and I'm going to write the book, The Final Call. I want to make this story better because Theo had written those nasty things about me in his book. I wanted to make it a better story. So I called Tyson Nash. I said, hey, Tyson, Kerry here. I'm writing a book. I'd like your permission to share a story. Do you remember the situation with Theo Fleury in Madison Square Garden in December 19 of 2000? Guys, the phone went dead, quiet. It was dead airspace. He said, Kerry, that was a life-altering situation. It was career-changing. This was just an apology, guys. Now, I said, talk to me, tell me about it. So he, in his own words, told me the impact that had on him, and it's profound. He still talks about it. He goes on to say, and I think for the benefit of time, I won't read his exact quote, but your coach has my book, and I would truly encourage you to read that Tyson Nash statement about how certain coaches asked him to play a certain way, and it wasn't really who he was. So to this very day, those two players still talk about that situation as I'm talking to you now about it. It had a profound effect on them. So what I'm suggesting to you folks is that you can make a difference. This was nothing more than a simple requested apology and a handshake. And it had a profound effect on them to this very day. So if you open the door for somebody, you smile at somebody, you stick up for somebody, that might be being bullied, you say, hey, that's enough. Don't do that. That's not right. Whatever. You can make a difference that you might not even know at the time that people will remember forever.
That's great. It's great stuff. Okay. All right. So we're going to be in our last part over here, which is our rapid fire. Okay. So ready or not, here we come. So let's go with question number one. Your favorite Montreal Canadiens player to watch?
Guy Lafleur.
Your favorite Montreal Canadiens era or team?
Oh gosh, I like the 93 93 Stanley Cup win against the Los Angeles Kings. I had game 2. I measured Marty McSorley's stick. It changed the whole series.
And I think you knew it right from the get-go that it was illegal.
Absolutely.
Your worst call ever?
The one that I didn't make was the high stick that I missed in 94 in the Western Conference Final Game 6. Wayne Gretzky, high stick. Doug Gilmour, captain of the Leafs, in overtime. I did not see it. I thought maybe it was a follow-through of a shot, but it would be a guess. And it was obviously a high stick. And Wayne Gretzky would not have been in the game to score the winning goal in overtime on the next series of play. And we don't know if maybe the Toronto Maple Leafs would have been playing the Montreal Canadiens in that final instead of the Kings.
You took my next question away, which was your worst non-call besides the Gretzky one.
Well, let's go back the other way then. What was the worst call I ever made? I had one, and it's kind of funny because there were 2 defensemen that were centermen or players going through 2 defensemen, and he got fouled. And I raised my arm, and it's a delayed penalty, and it went on and on. Like it seemed like a minute and a half of the delay, and I forgot which player was supposed to get the penalty. And I blew the whistle, and I said, "Okay, number so and so, you've got 2 minutes for tripping." He said, "It wasn't me." I said, "Who was it?" He said, "It was him." I said, "Okay, him. Let's go. You got 2 minutes for tripping." He sold out his player.
Loudest crowd ever?
Chicago Stadium. Unbelievable.
Who has helped you the most along the way?
God.
I know you are very religious, and so that's it's very touching. Biggest comeback you've ever seen?
Mark Messier, who's a friend of mine, promised in 1994 Game 6 in the Eastern Conference Series against the New Jersey Devils. He promised that morning they had to win to force a Game 7. He told the media, "I guarantee we're going to win tonight." He guaranteed the win. At the end of the second period, I had just given Esa Tikkanen of the Rangers a kneeing penalty for kneeing Stéphane Richer. I went into the locker room and I said to my 2 colleagues, "Stick a fork in this New York Ranger team. They're done. They're out of gas. They're done." Mark Messier came back and scored 3 goals, natural hat trick, and took the game on his back and came through with his prediction, "We're going to win the game tonight." And then they won Game 7, and then they won the Stanley Cup in 94 against Vancouver Canucks.
Okay. And our last question, perhaps we'll put off the timer. I don't want to put any more pressure on you. What would you like people to remember you?
Awesome question. From a family perspective, and I was asked just not too long ago what my sort of claim to fame is going to be. It's my family, my wife, my 7 children, and my 12 grandchildren. From a hockey perspective, I gave the very best I had to give to the game that I love. And I would like people to remember me and players and the relationships that I have for being fair, being honest, and being courageous.
Good stuff. We are coming to an end. Perhaps what we can do is, Coach LeMay, are you still around? Are you on call?
I am indeed.
I know there's some questions in the chat. We're going to perhaps just limit it to 2. I'm not sure if Coach LeMay, you can just filter all these questions and maybe just grab 2, and then we'll end off with Mr. Ruggi, our principal.
Sure. Good evening. Who inspired you, Kerry, to be a referee?
Ted Garvin, who played in the minor pros with my father, was coaching in the International Hockey League. And he went on to coach the Detroit Red Wings. So he saw me in diapers. Ted watched me play all the way up. When I finished playing junior, he said to me, listen, Kerry, he said, you're a good little player. You play big, you play tough, but you're not going to make it to the NHL. You can play in the International League. You can probably play in the American League, but you're going to get crushed. You know, as big as you play, those guys are so much bigger. He said, why don't you get into officiating? Here's a brochure to a referee school. I looked at it. It was a 5-day camp. I paid $250. I thought, maybe not a bad idea. He said, we need guys that understand the game, that played to a good level, that can skate, and they understand the emotional element of the game. And boom, it was the best advice I ever had, because following that, I went to that referee school, and a Hall of Fame referee by the name of Frank Udvari scouted the school. He watched me 10 minutes on the ice, referee a men's intermediate game. And he met me afterwards. He said, I think you got it, kid. I want you to come to training camp 3 days later.
Wow. Oh, very good. Do you have an idol? Who's your idol? Who inspired you the most?
Well, you know, when I came to training camp as a 19-year-old, I learned, and from my playing days, I knew that as a invited official, I knew enough to keep my ears open and my mouth shut. And that way you could learn so much more. I wasn't arrogant or cocky like, you know, people thought I was when they saw me on the ice. And I would sit and I would just listen. And I was accepted by the hierarchy of the officials at that time, the senior officials. After 4 days, they invited me to go out with them for a beer afterwards. They brought me into their tight-knit circle. And I learned so much by listening and not talking. Now I talk forever.
Great advice, huh? One more, Coach Doran?
Yes, two usually means three. That's the way it goes around here. You know, one more, one more, one more.
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds like a referee. You do that one more time, you're going to get one.
The hardest game you ever refereed?
Oh boy, I had so many. The most difficult game, theoretically, and this pertains to what's happening now. Theoretically, when you have a game that you know you've let the players sort of run the roost, when it gets out of control, it's like a snowball that starts rolling down the hill. And when you let one go, and then you think, oh man, I should have called that, but it's too late. And then the other team, you feel like, well, I got to let one go that way too, because I want to be fair. And then it's usually worse than the previous. And I've been in that situation, and it's terrible. It's gut wrenching. And finally, at some point, you have to stop it. You've got to stop that snowball before it's an avalanche. So what I would do at that point, at a stoppage of play, I would go to the two coaches and I'd say, listen, I've been way too generous. I'm going to stop it right now. It might be your team that's going to get one or their team. Do me a favor. You control your players. I'm going to get him to control his, and we're going to play, because I'm embarrassed. I've embarrassed myself and the game. Tighten up.
Oh, as a good leader, you take it back to yourself and diffuse it, and then everybody will follow you. So excellent. Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for
thanks, Coach.
the questions. Coach Lemay,
Great question. Great question.
Our Sport Études program coordinator. So I'm going to pass the torch to our principal of Laval Junior Academy, Mr. Ruji.
Thanks, Coach. Kerry, thank you so much for accepting to speak to us again tonight. It's truly, it's gold. What you're sharing with us tonight is gold for our student athletes, and I'm hoping that they'll learn from the inspiration that you're sharing tonight. You're an inspiration, Kerry, today, yesterday, and tomorrow. I want you to know that. We believe that. Kerry, I'll take a couple of questions your way. Coach Doran is a part-time referee. I'm a part-time referee when I'm not principal here at LJA. You're considered as one of the best skating referees to have hit the NHL ice. Who's the best skating referee today?
I would have to say that Kelly Sutherland is someone that sort of emulated what I did. I passed the torch to him, just like that great sign in the Montreal Canadiens dressing room. From these failing hands, I passed the torch. And in my final game in 2010, New York Rangers, Philadelphia Flyers, final game of the season for the final playoff spot, I passed the torch to my colleague, teammate, Kelly Sutherland. I love the boy. He's now a man. He's 50 years old, just had his 50th birthday. And he's got so much character. If I would like a guy like Kelly Sutherland to be my son. So he's the guy.
So Kerry, you officiated, when you started officiating in the NHL, I believe there was a one-man referee, and then the game shifted to two-man referee. Do you think that the two-man system has reduced the need for a good skating referee?
It has, but it's a different style of skating. Before, when there was one referee, you chased the play. You had to skate fast forward. Now you have to be adept at skating backwards fast to lead the play and be out of the way as they enter the zone. It's the difference between being a forward your whole career or being a defenseman. And there's a different aptitude in the style and the way that we skate. Fortunately, I could go both ways. I was able to skate forwards and backwards pretty much about the same speed. And it's about balance and it's about agility. And so the two referee system has been needed for sure because of the speed of the game. And when we stopped the hooking and the holding, and Commissioner Bettman pleaded with us to stop the obstruction. It finally took two referees on the ice, but it also created some problems in the growing pains of having two different mental sort of thoughts as to how the game should be called.
Very good, thank you. Wes McCauley, he's a bit of a showman. He's intense, a little bit like you were during your time in the NHL. Is that a fair comparison?
Yeah, Wes he's a great kid. I love Wes, and he was a good player. His dad, John McCauley, was one of my mentors. I love John McCauley. He became our boss. I started officiating with him when I came to the minor leagues, and John was working the American League. But once he became our boss, there's certain leaders that you will go through a wall for as players, as athletes. I would go through a wall for John McCauley. He had faith in me. He had trust in me. He knew he could put me into big games, and I would do everything I possibly could to be the best I could for him. And it wasn't about me. And so Wes, funny story, we had the two referee system, and the game was in Toronto in the Air Canada Center. And the glass broke with less than a minute left in the first period. And it was taking forever for the attendants to fix the glass. So the players are unsettled. And I said, Wes, let's suspend the whatever time on the clock. We'll send the players to the dressing room, and then we'll come out and they'll resurface, they'll fix the glass, and we'll start for whatever left at the proper end zones. And then the horn will go and we'll switch ends. He said, great idea. So he went and told the one coach, and I told the other. And now I said, look, all the players, they don't know what's going on here. You got to make an announcement. And prior to that, every time I called a penalty, Wes rushed to the penalty box ahead of me, even though I had the call. He flipped on his mic and he announced the penalty. And I thought, Wes, what are you doing? So I said, hey, you better go announce that we're going to suspend the period, and we'll come back out after they fix the glass and resurface the ice. He said, I'm all over it. So he got over there and he flipped on his mic. But what he didn't realize is that if I flipped my mic on at the same time, it cut his mic out. So he's standing there with TV and flips it on, and all of a sudden he's going, flipped it on again. I said, come on, Wes, let's go. It's not working. We get in the dressing room. I said, what the heck were you doing racing me to the penalty box when I call a penalty to make the announcement? He said, phrase. He said, it's hockey night in Canada. You've been doing it for 100 years. And he said, I just want to get a little airtime. I said, good. I said, your airtime there when you announced that last one, what happened to your mic? He said, I don't know. The darn thing wouldn't work. I said, I'll tell you why. You flipped it on. I flipped mine on. It cut you out. I got him back.
Classic. It's classic. Kerry, tell us quickly.
Here's a good point.
Yes,
Marucci. Here's the point. Students, have fun at what you do. Love your job. Love everything that you do. And I'll tell you, you'll never work a day in your life. So we can have fun, and it doesn't affect, they're just little snippets inside the big picture and the big game. But my dad used to say to me, Kerry said, you're always smiling out there. I said, Dad, why wouldn't I? I love what I do. I've got the best job in the world. I'm a hockey fan, and I'm 12 feet away from Wayne Gretzky and Guy Lafleur and Sir Savard and all those great hockey Hall of Famers.
Yeah, well, you're a legend in your own right, Kerry. Tell us
Thank
quickly
you.
about those pucks behind you.
Oh gosh, this was well, that's my Stanley Cup that the league gives any official when they retire that has worked the Stanley Cup. It's got my name on the rings, just like the other Stanley Cup that you know in the Hall of Fame. It has the series that I worked in the years. This is the final Stanley Cup final game that I did. It was the Calgary Flames in against the Tampa Lightning. Tampa won the game, game 7 by 1 goal. It was my final Stanley Cup final, 12, my 12th one. And it was really, it was a great career, guys. I got to tell you, I have a blessed life.
Great. Kerry, I know that Coach Doron spoke to you before the interview tonight about the ambassador program here at LJA. This is the banner we're working on for you. We're going to need your pictures. We're going to need some high resolution pictures for the banner. This is going to go up once it's finished. We'll send it to you for final approval. I've got your quote that you sent in, which was one of the 3 quotes was about the journey. Tell us about the journey and the destination. Why is that meaningful to you?
Well, it's so meaningful because as we all embark on the startup of a journey, you know, the journey can be the difficult part. We're going to have peaks and valleys and ups and downs, and we're going to be met with all kinds of things that we have to overcome. But we always have to set our sights on the final end result, the goal. And so the reward for your journey is that final destination. Once we get there and we know we've arrived and we've done all the good things and all the right things that we could possibly do, we have nothing to feel bad about. If we give our very best and we help people along the way and do all of those things, the reward is when you get to that final destination.
It's fantastic. That's the inspiration that I'm referring to, Kerry. Your banner is going to hang in the community hall here at the school, and it's going to hang with the banners of some of our famous alumni and the success stories from our school. So our students will be able to look up and see your banner, see your name, your quote, who you are, and your inspiration and contribution for our students' future success. Thank you so much for accepting to do that.
Mr. Rucci, I am so honored and humbled to be part of that great school and the tradition, the great tradition that you have at Laval Academy. It touches me deeply.
Thank you so much. Coach Doron, I'm going to let you close it up and sign off. Thanks, Kerry.
So
Thank you,
on behalf
Principal.
of everyone over here at Laval Junior Academy, the parents, the students, the coaches, Kerry, thank you so much for your time. You know, it's really, really appreciated. Every time I talk to you, I always learn more. I think, you know, the idea here was the trust. One of the things that you do is like you trust yourself. These referees, they're different birds, as I like to say, and you know, you have to sort of trust each other. And one thing that I remember when we first met, I think it's, you know, it's over 10 years ago, but it's the cream will rise to the top. That's what you were always saying. And a lot of my athletes that I work with, they work so hard and life is just so unfair, especially now. But if you trust the process, you believe in yourself, the cream will rise to the top. And so on behalf of everyone, thank you, Kerry. We'll be in touch and we'll see you around sometime soon, I'm sure.
Thank you, my friend.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening.
Bye,
Enjoy.
Coach John.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye, Kerry.
Best
Bye,
of luck.
Kerry.
Thank you, kids. Best of luck.
Bye. Have a good night.
You too. Au revoir.
Wow, your
Bye,
French is it seems to be improving.
Bonne soirée.
Mr. Kerry.
President of the National Hockey League. He was a brilliant man. He was a Rhodes Scholar. He was a prosecutor, a lawyer in the Nuremberg trials after the Second World War for the Canadian Army. And so I felt so honored to be able to be mentioned in the same breath with Mr. Campbell, who actually was my first boss when I signed a contract. He was the president of the NHL. Pretty cool.
Yeah, but when I was looking through some research, I saw that a bunch of people were talking about like you in the Hall of Fame. So, I
Right.
hope that happens for you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And there's a message. Well, there's a real message there too, because I stuck up for the players with concussions, and it wasn't a popular decision. It didn't do me any good, but I felt it was the right thing to do. And it created a lot of animosity with higher ups in the NHL structure. But I can look in the mirror, just like I could after a tough call that I thought was the right one, and I had to do what was right. I felt that at this juncture of the game back 10, 11 years ago, when I made the statements that upset the league, it was necessary, and they've moved to a better direction for player protection. And it ultimately comes down to your level. If you're a hockey player, I don't want to see you have serious injury that results from a bad hit or a hit to the head.
Well, I'm not a hockey player. I play basketball. I'm in the team.
Oh,
but
great.
Yeah, but hockey is it's Canadian sport, and it is me and my dad's sport, and yeah.
Do you know I had I know you probably got the look that you got to get off the phone here, but I have 7 kids, and our 2 oldest daughters played basketball in high school, and they were great players, and the second one got a full Division I athletic scholarship, $38,000 a year to play basketball at Manhattan College in New York. And then she got her master's degree as the assistant coach at St. John's. So what I'm saying to you is keep playing, all of you. If anybody else is on there, play to the very best level you can, because you never know how it can impact your life down the road through education, scholarship, and maybe someday even professional.
Well, I hope that you have a good day, and also tomorrow, and for the rest of your time. Goodbye, Kerry.
Thank you.
Moshe.
Merci beaucoup, mon ami.
Thank you, Moishi.
De rien, Kerry. J'espère de te voir encore une journée.
I hope that
Ma français est très mal.
I hope to see you again one day.
Thank you, my friend. I do too.
Whether it be on Zoom or be in real life.
Okay.
Perfect. I'll come to school.
All right. Bye.
Good night, Moishi.
Bye. What a nice boy.
Great stuff, Kerry. Wow.
Good
You don't
kid.
stop. You're a machine.
Hey, listen, give, right?
Without the expectation, that's definitely key. I know we spoke yesterday,
always a pleasure. I talked to my wife, Kathy, about you interviewing me for your thesis and your master's. And I said, I remember it like it was yesterday. And, it was supposed to be like an hour interview or something like that. And we just kept talking. I just kept talking and talking and talking. And it expanded, I think your intent from, your notes from when you first started. And you really cracked the egg to make the omelet when we started talking. And the more we talked, the more you got into the real nuts and bolts of the officiating psychology and philosophy with your questions. And I mean, if I didn't make my time available, maybe it wouldn't have worked as well. I don't know. Or maybe it would have worked better.
Well,
Who
it's
knows?
funny you say that because you're right. It was supposed to last an hour, and the other guys, they all made it to the NHL after. I was comparing NHL with AHL. So Marc Joannette, who
Yep.
eventually made it up, and somebody I forget at the moment, but I had to transcribe that afterwards, and so
Oh, boy.
that took a long time. But then you came back several months later and then finished off the other 4 hours or something, you know? And the only thing I got into trouble with was that I was told that I had to cut you off a lot earlier. But the reality is all your answers, not only they're textbook, but not only like you have the players who are good coaches and you have the athletes who are good athletes, but I think somehow you're able to basically mix both in there and to be as good as you are.
Well, I got to tell you, Lior, that when the light went on for me, following the Gretzky thing and other situations, and sitting down with Scotty Morrison, my boss, at the end of one year, and asking him, even though he said, "Hey, your year was great," and he went through things quickly and gave me my rating, and you're well ahead of the curve, and this is what you're doing great. And he closed his book, and I said, "Thank you for that, Scotty." But I said, "Would you do me a favor? Would you open that book up again and go through some of these reports, evaluations that were given by supervisors? I'd like to know the things that might have a common thread that I need to be better at." And he looked at me like nobody ever asked him. They want to know the negative stuff. Everybody wants to know the good stuff. And we went through it, and it was an amazing conversation from that point. There were things that were at the bottom lines of all of these reports that had a common theme. Sometimes appears arrogant, sometimes appears cocky. So it was just a passing comment at the end after all this good stuff. Great penalty selection, great skating, great positioning, great. And so I said, that's what I want to know. And I said, "You're a little guy, Scotty. Like you and I are, but you carry yourself like a giant." I said, "Help me, because I just think I'm being confident when the reports are saying that I'm being cocky and arrogant. I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that guy." So he gave me some amazing tips to think before I spoke. He said, once it comes out, it's out. You got to think before you speak. You're a fast-paced guy. You walk fast, you skate fast, you speak fast.
Yeah.
And so that was the first recommendation he made. And the other thing he said is, you're a leader, but your colleagues, the linesmen, don't make decisions that don't really mean much. Let them make those decisions. And we're not even talking on the ice. It was like, where do you want to go for lunch? Let them make that decision. So I started asking the guys, where do you want to eat today? Rather than me say, hey, let's go over to, this place or that place. And so I started to decompress a little bit and just relax. And I started to develop relationships with players and coaches that took me over the top. I went from doing one round of the Stanley Cup playoffs to the next season doing 2 rounds, to the third year doing the Stanley Cup finals. I took off like a rocket ship. And I've had situations with players where the old Kerry would surface, and he would, out it'd come, and I'd go, I'd hear myself. I went, excuse me, listen, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say it that way. This is what I meant to say. And I developed relationships. My phone speed dial, I've got, you name it. I've got guys that we stay in touch. I've got guys in our golf organization. They've won 24 Stanley Cups. We've got 4 Conn Smythe Trophy winners that I've invited in. We're all friends. We do charity work together. It's just at this stage of our life, you're much younger than I am, but I'm on the back 9. I'm in overtime. And sometimes sometimes I think it's going to be sudden death.
No
So
pun intended.
you want to do all you can, and that's kind of where we're at in life.
That's great. It's great stuff.
Thanks for your time, man.
Chris?
Thank you, Kerry. Fantastic.
I'm available. Anybody has a question, like, don't be shy.
I mean, talk about quick-witted, when we were doing the rapid fire, and then the second question came up, and you're like, okay, well, let's backtrack. How do you teach being quick-witted like that?
It's personality. My wife often says, and a couple of our kids have what she calls the Fraser wit. Sometimes it goes a little over the edge, and sometimes can be inappropriate. But I always found on the ice that if I could use humor to diffuse aggressive situations and use myself, self-deprecating humor is the best way to diffuse things. And I remember being young, arrogant referee in my first year of officiating, and the home team was getting shellacked, and the players were frustrated. Every time another goal was scored against them, fans would litter the ice, and the players, they looked for the referee to blame. And I was banging them with misconducts when they were cursing at me, and I had them sitting 3 deep in the penalty box. Finally, the coach sent his captain over as they're scraping up the popcorn boxes and things off the ice. And he very politely said, "Mr. Referee, my coach wants to know if he can get a penalty for thinking." I said, "Well, if he doesn't think out loud, he'd probably be okay." He said, "In that case, he thinks you're a blanking arsehole." Well, I looked over at the coach, and he was standing up on the bench, and he had that scowl, and I started to grin because I found the humor in it. And he started to laugh, and I laughed. And it was a great lesson for me not to take myself so seriously, to enjoy the game that I love, and to try and be part of the solution and not part of the problem. And I was creating some of the problem in that game.
Yeah, it's great stuff. I mean, you often say, how do you know if you have a good referee? I mean, you don't really feel it, you don't know it, this and that. But what about like some more higher level? Is this a good referee? Give me a couple of the highest level characteristics.
Well, we've talked about the mechanics. You have to be able to skate. You have to get there, and you have to be able to see it. And when I watch my grandsons play, and one is a U18 player. He's going to be playing Junior A next year. He just at Detroit. There's 3 teams want to draft him down in the North American Junior A League. And when I see some of the officials that don't work hard, they're lazy. They let they're somewhat out of shape and not in condition, or they don't seem to care enough. They don't work hard enough to get in position, or they throw the puck down like it's a basketball. Just unprofessional, and it really bothers me. I think you have to be as professional as you can be, no matter what level of officiating you're doing, because we all want to aspire to be the best, or should, and it shouldn't just be about that paycheck that guys get to do 5, 6, 8 games on a weekend or a Saturday. They should take pride and really have a love for the game. So for me, I mean, that's what it's all about. You got to love the game. You have to know also that people don't come to watch you. It's not about us, but we're an integral part of the game, and we can enhance it. We can make it better. And that was something I always tried to do before every game. I wanted to be the best I could be for the game. I wanted to protect the players. I think player protection is the most important job of a hockey referee, for sure, and even football. You've got to protect the players. And did you guys happen to see the Florida Panther Tampa game 1? It was war. It was like old school hockey that I haven't seen in old school. They weren't just hitting everybody with the puck, but there was hits from behind. There were cross-check, like at the goal line, knocked the guy right into the end boards, no call. And it was frustrating for me, knowing how you have to control a game at a certain point. You can let it run to a certain level, and then when it crosses over, you better pull it back, because if you don't pull it back, then that's when they start being accountants and not officials, not referees. I let that one go. Oh, now you're managing the game with marbles in your pocket. One for you, one for you. And all of a sudden there's some stupid call like a guy slashes a guy's stick and broke his stick. Oh, that's a penalty. That's automatic. You know, and it is the smoking gun. But what about the dangerous? There was a minor penalty called on the Florida player for running a guy from behind, and he charged him from the face-off circle, face first into the glass. He got a 2-minute penalty, and they suspended him for 1 game. That's got to be a major in-game misconduct. That's got to be, could be a match penalty for check from behind. But the guys don't do it anymore. They don't step up, most of them. Drives me
How much
nuts.
of that, Kerry, is fear? How much is there fear in some of these referees that they don't want to influence the game? They don't want to call that 5-minute penalty. They don't want to throw somebody out. Is there fear?
Mr. Rucci, it's absolutely, I think the game is being refereed now from a room in Toronto with the hockey operations people, and the officials would they would rather defer those hard calls up to the people that can affect their, you know, their livelihood and their next level that, or the next series they go to. When we were talking about video review, I welcomed it. McCreary, on the other hand, didn't want it. He didn't want his authority question. I wanted it. I welcomed it. I said, because I'll tell you why. On the odd chance, on the odd times that I'm wrong, I want to be right. I want for the game to be right. And I wanted also to prove the times, 99%, I hope, that I am right. Let it verify the right call was made. So I welcomed it. But what happened with the 2-referee system influx, where guys were trying to compete, the young guys came in from the American League and they wanted to be us. They wanted to be recognized. They wanted to have the authority. And so there were times where I would have a play like, 15 feet from me, 10 feet, and I'd look at it and I'd shake my head, and then I'd hear a whistle from 100 plus feet away, and the guy's coming in from a long distance call and made the call. And then the players would say, Kerry, what's going on? You said it wasn't like you shaking your head. I said, well, he thought it was from where he was. Yeah. So I'll tell you, and I won't mention the guy's name because he's a French referee and he's still working. But I had a game in Madison Square Garden, and some nights things just happen in your area of coverage. And the first 4 penalties, that first period in Madison Square, were right in my wheelhouse. They were right near me. My hand would go up. The other guy far away, his hand would go up. Now, whenever 2 referees have their arms up, you're supposed to confer to make sure you have the same penalty before you go announce it. Mm-hmm. There was no conference. It was immediately race to the penalty box, flip on the mic, and make the announcement 4 times in a row, first period. So there's just before the end of the first period, there's a play going down the wing. The other guy's leading the play backwards, and I see him focused on the puck. I've got the off wing guy. He hooks on and water skis. Interference. Up goes my arm. Play's going on. 15 seconds in the delay. Finally, the other guy put his arm up, and I'm standing beside the linesman, Pat DiPuzzo. I said, Dapso, I didn't see another penalty. We got another penalty? He said, I don't know. So the whistle blew. I blew the whistle, stopped play on the change of possession. First time this referee of 5 penalties, this is the first time he came over. He said, what you got? I said, what I got? I said, what you got? I knew that he didn't see it. And he went, I said, yeah, I said, don't ever put your hand up unless you see the infraction. So I went over and announced the penalty. So we go in the dressing room, and I said, this is the politics of, any business, I guess. So I said, what the hell are you doing? I said, like, you're racing to the penalty box, you're flipping it on, you didn't even see the last one, and you want to know what it is. And he said, well, a friend of mine on the off-ice crew told me that they got a directive from hockey operations, and they're supposed to record which referee calls the penalty. Oh. So I was 0 for 4 at that point. He was 4 for 4, which is completely ridiculous. Mm-hmm. If we're having a quota that we have to make, it made no sense. It's not in the best interest of the game. So that's the kind of political stuff that I, at the end, I mean, it was like, this is too much.
Okay, perhaps last one here. I as a referee for 20 plus years myself, I always wanted to come up and make up a new rule. When you have a gloving ahead or a high stick and the players are just sort of watching each other, that the referee can just wave it off just to quicken the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
You'd support that?
I think it has merit. I think, that you guys are the biggest obstacle, I think, that you and Principal Rucci have is dealing with parents. Am I correct?
Absolutely.
We were at a game watching my our high school grandson play the other day. The referee threw 2 parents out of the arena.
Wow. Yeah.
I actually did that 2 years ago. I actually threw a couple of parents out of the arena during a playoff game. One of the parents was just completely out of control and verbally abusive. Not just to me. I mean, a little bit to me, but to some of the players on the ice, and including players of his own son's team. And I just couldn't believe it. And I said, that's it. And I went over to the scorer's table. I called over the guy from the arena and I said, you get those 2 parents out of here or the game doesn't restart.
Good for you.
Yeah. And it was during a playoff game. And, obviously we're being supervised during playoff games.
Yep.
And my supervisor came down in between, at the end of the game, in between 2 games. And he said that was the right call. He said we could not continue with that parent acting the way he was. So,
great stuff.
Any plans for a second book, Kerry?
It's the hardest thing that I ever did, writing that book. I had the contract with the publisher. I went to visit him in Toronto for my first game in my final season, and I just told him stories for 3 hours, and he said, I want your book. We got a deal done, but I never started it until basically 2 days after I retired, my final game. And my wife was browsing through the computer, and I had given them a picture and a working title, The Final Call. And she came down to me as I'm starting to write my chapter outline, and she said, Kerry, your book's for sale. I said, what? She said, yeah, it's on Amazon for fall release. I hadn't even started writing it yet. So I'll tell you, it was, thank God for my wife, because I will tell you that I get burned out. I'd write around the clock. I'd move from one room to another with my laptop to try and spike things up. And she finally, I was so worn down. She got to the point of, she said, okay, you've got a day and a half to do the Detroit chapter. You've got, she had it down on the calendar as to what I could do. The one with Theo Fleury, I did around the clock. It was so draining. I was done for about a day and a half, 2 days afterwards, because it took so much emotion.
That's emotional. Yeah.
I have to go, guys. Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Kerry. Enjoy the games tonight.
My pleasure. Okay, you guys too. Be well.
Good night. Thank you.
And thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you, Kerry.